just we want to know if like somebody no-showed or something like that.
There's coffee on my clothes.
Oh no.
How did this happen?
This is recording. I love this. Oh no.
There's coffee on most of the clothes. Okay, that's fine.
You guys all set?
The judge is
The judge?
here. I'm not
He is?
sure. Yeah, he's here. That's his
Okay.
stuff. He just
Then-
popped up.
Alright. All set.
Thanks.
The winning seasons. Is anyone not ready?
One second. I'm good.
Contention 1 is the advantage. The Saudi coalition uses U.S. weapons to commit war crimes in Yemen. New arms will be used directly to kill thousands of civilians. Letters 19. Trump hopes to exploit any loophole to get following weapons. The Iran death destruction on civilians. The Saudis and Emirates deliberately target non-Muslims. War plans have been conducted for 13 times. The coalition has bombed as well as Malta and water treatment facilities. Even the dictatorship out of the army is knowingly providing war criminals with the means to make war crimes. Congress needs to block the state civilians. The coalition will cope with these weapons. 233,000 Yemenis, including 100 Yemenis, will die in 2019 unless U.S. blocks arms to the coalition. Bossy 19 cells will step in and eliminate and influence the death toll provides the 233,000 combatants in war children child like every 240,000 killed would be children under 5. Armed souls constitute ongoing participation in an active genocide. U.S. complicity is enabling the slaughter bombing. 19. The U.S. provided assistance to sexual genocide, even if the U.S. conducted is irrelevant to whether the complicit The U.S. cannot plausibly deny knowledge of crimes. The coalition genocide is hidden in plain sight. Cases of genocide like Yemen are hidden behind a consensual veil. They do not conform to the limits of conception of genocide. Hopelessly conception can reveal the process by which the foundation of life can be destroyed. The coalition's action amounts to a single genocide on all aspects of the foundation of genocide. Without support from the U.S. coalition, and be capable of committing this genocide on the scale it achieved, it is incontrovertible that U.S. responsibility for genocide. Only the plan can end the war and jumpstart peace negotiations. Given 18, the question turns to what precise measures Congress should adopt. I focus on one of our future FMS to suspend existing DCS to many meetings and logistically having immediate effects would have no substitute. They can't last a couple months while the parts of mechanics and transform without enormous setbacks during a years-long transition. Army SEALs log independent departure over training spare parts and technical upgrades. If the U.S. decided it was going to cut off every sea of the Air Force, it would be grounded tomorrow. England is U.S. border is better than more targeted evidence. That's what we're watching. And even the absence of a diplomatic push will end the conflict actions will signal that will become contingent on progress in political negotiations. That's the only way leaders can be convinced to pursue a settlement. Plan. The United States federal government should bar foreign military sales and suspend the recommendation of ability to air to ground strike capabilities for Operation Yemen. Contention 2 is the method. Our priority as students should be condemning the atrocities committed by our government and the narratives that use to justify them. Krieger 18 will try such as the war crimes in Yemen. This person will advocate for skeptics with regard to war promotion and putting the conversation in its rightful place, which is question 1. The own country, the problem arising in government, the deflects attention calling out how your own government's practices the exact opposite. We can have sufficient influence on government policy. If we face truth that we can do something about for we should respond instead of lauding ourselves for crimes we can do a little while having a responsibility is our own foreign policy. This isn't how I feel about and here's one to think that proponents of the empower one and these of the public say ignore the atrocities. This is the only way to ignore continue to serve voice without domestic pushback. The question for the debate is how to effectively change the arms trade policies. Critical theory arguments are relevant, but it is more strategically useful to deploy them in support of specific policy change. Bolton and my 16 have discourse can be disrupted to get different strategies challenge. Resistance is recognized in terms of taking seriously challenge and change legislation. Reason why it tends to focus on critical deconstruction, critical problem solving, as already about reducing problem solving and critical theories that policy gets to be less interesting medical theory. They look for knowledge that they can use to instrumentally solve parts of the problem. What does have translated is a discourse of theory into the world of disarmament policy. They can also look at the application transport and emphasize the benefit. There are specific applicable goals. This application for branding and threatening debates over narrow policy goals are valuable for broader change. Federation of American Sciences is the most critical elements of leadership without it. The inflation won't be for it. It takes a lot of education to get an individual to work against arms trafficking and so it can't have a narrow focus. When you try to shut down the charges rate, you set yourself against all manufacturers with a narrow goal. You identify allies who can advance the reform. You must have a robustly argument that raise an opposition link out carefully develop solutions to research agendas closely to policy. Solution-oriented policy research is necessary to develop effective solutions to social problems heard. 15, even if it implies more policy analysis, to have a policy analysis, teaches that policy law, implementation, social structure, organization, behavior, and effects are critical to how outcomes they must play key roles in thinking through how ways to address problems and bring up policy ideas for instance, critical policy analysts not only have a problem-oriented interdisciplinary approach to policy and the ability and synthesis to bring out policy relevance and problems, but they understand how policy makers a policy analyst and institute counter-argument and also recognize they also options the most we have about policy analysis. I bring that public debate. Problem orientation focuses especially on the social problems. Actually, it's beginning to see policy analysts play critical roles as the intermediate. They will understand and interpret the way on a far deeper level to connect a person in knowledge and analysis with policy. Vote apt despite the lack of 100 answers. These naughty. We're saying that the political choices are always made in a condition of partial uncertainty. It takes seriously the primary approach with the instruments and theories that aim not to provide a universal solution to all human problems, but to help advocate choices and conditions and human events should be understood as a cluster of conditions coming together rather than arriving to the linear cost-effective relation that would operate in incomplete information agency is ensuring a path-dependent pragmatic really process of revision of ideas for situation mediation. State-based engagement is an inevitable and good alternative methods that refuse the state cause disempowerment. 16 has traditionally projected engagement with the state on the basis that engagement can replicate higher parts of hierarchies. They argue that abstention from state policy denies political applications of power themselves rather than they say that when we refuse the engagement demands on the state does not entail individuals remain its abstention from state policy has genuine option. We are already involved state policy. The question is not whether we engage but how we do so. Recognition and justification from the state risk policy which don't have willingness to engage for education should be seen not as state reform is compromised. The NC state policy can have made a sense for years, which the state could be presented as the main threat. Abstract questioning is useless. If debate seeks to design concrete alternatives, running it, so hard, yeah, this seems to be a simple someone incredible, quickly, the question mark, basically, social transformation, in order to reach basically, you have to produce new all collections, revolution, drive people, seeking a reigning ideology, our moves, as yours, as shortcomings are to be found, I basically, never need talk about, so what is your plan if you want, revolution, contribution, is this where you start having any leisure with the, we are intoxicated with the creativity to say that what we need more than ever is competition, everyone knows something is wrong. Attempting to simplify the world into monolithic structures, brackets off lived experience for the sake of abstraction, which naturalizes and fully name, demonstrating how intelligent left into socially what is theorizing that political social power is insufficient in such to protect literacy about lived oppression and experiences and interpret as a symptom of the love after say systematic reflection on social conditions to become effective political actively writing up social reality and political substance and body is something closely theorizing intellectual reification produces explanation ways of using the world and capacity for self-reflection towards self-sufficient sociality into living the external same way that delivers an epistemic instruction to especially the article field years that remain closed as all pressure and paradigms of the moment appears that play but it is according to Nazi circums the dungeons of the year has one with how political stupidity as problem rather than the phenomenon driven at root in social rather than ontological abstraction of the erasing with practical chips away at problems that produce and all count that has a political aim of amassing economic to contribute to gradual actualization of other ways of being. Detailed oriented politics are key to effective reform. Vague proposals collapse to totalitarianism. Basically, when can someone with the most widely used to social change and the following there's then politics that leave them like with one or more picture of was that the US and the 11 that must be within a radical revolution. We cannot know of the shape of what will come after the resolution. Anything will be better without a vision of an alternative. We call both a failure of imagination and failure of reality, even how such a labor is peaceful and intellectually difficult with regard to a more because of the typical academic theories that Boston says that if one does not provide a vision of Boston is better offering the focal project or focus the academic theory to produce the alternative that appear what's really feasible. Ethics and truth must be contingent and particular, induced from empirical context, not deduced from theoretical abstraction. Distinct theories are host or what is that structure or not from an oversimplification or just contrary aspects harming injustice and free just as much reference to express and help injustice in particular the relationships different than theoretical dynamics of its causes, fears and details of conceptualism and help the world of the practice occurs and the causes of the present situation, how history, which situations are his pluralism starts to more radical than the idea of injustice and truth. Certain groups of fragments of voice of views that create changes of injustice that wise practices that lead to a complexity of the case and oversimplification as the surrounding the confusion that he can with an atomicity of particularism. Martha Card atomistic form of particularism. Open for questions.
Okay. Awesome. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On Yemen, your Goodman 18 evidence says that only the plan will end the war, but your Bachmann evidence specifically says that the U.S. and the U.K.'s engagement with like selling Saudi Arabia arms is what's leading to like Yemeni involvement. I'm just confused as to how only the plan will end the war.
The Goodman evidence isolates that the U.S. is the largest supporter of the coalition. We make up 60% of their imports, ending all those arms, and the technical support that Saudi Arabia requires and depends on is sufficient to stop the coalition in their tracks.
Okay, so I'm just then how does ending air-to-ground strike capabilities then also stop all other technical arms sales for the U.S. to Saudi Arabia? Because Goodman is not predictive of only arms to sale, only air-to-ground strike capabilities.
Goodman actually is. I will quote you a line. I focused my conversation with former U.S. officials and other experts on the following set of options. One, bar future foreign military sales FMS relating to air-to-ground strike capabilities for Operation in Yemen, and then the rest of it.
Right, talking about maintenance and sustainment for fighter aircrafts, in-flight refueling, which is not ground-to-air strike capabilities, and then 4, mandatory financial sanctions. How does the plan access those things when it goes even farther than what the plan is talking about?
Yeah, the section that we have cut from Goodman isolates the first 3, bar future FMS.
Right. I get that you've cut that. I'm just confused as to how you can then win that you solve the war when Goodman isolates at least 3 other alternative causes.
The other option, bar in-flight refueling, has already been done. But that is ineffective. Goodman isolates that bar in future FMS is the best and most effective way.
Wait, so Goodman isn't predictive of the status quo then?
Goodman,
Because you say that we've already stopped sales, or like we've already stopped that refueling practices. Then like.
But Goodman indicates that is ineffective. In fact, in the last underlined portion, it talks about how suspension of in-flight refueling, option 3, was generally considered a weak measure on its own.
Okay, that doesn't make any sense. It's not. I can move on actually. I want to go on to your Bazi 19 evidence. Why do you use the specific number 233,000 Yemenis?
That is the number that Bazi uses. The that the death toll in Yemen could rise to 230 people.
Right. Why do you say that?
That's a description of the conflict that's currently happening. That's a description of how many people will die by the end.
To talk about like the magnitude of the impact of the AF?
No, it's to talk about there are
So it's
people
not the
dying. It's
magnitude.
descriptive of people dying. It's descriptive of the situation.
So I think it is then the magnitude of the AF. I also on Larison 19. How does the AF determine what specific arms will be used to directly kill thousands of civilians?
Goodman isolates that air-to-ground strike capabilities are the ones. Larison also talks about how warplanes have been the ones that have been conducting these airstrikes, that have been destroying schools, hospitals, mosques, markets, farms, etc.
Okay. That's cross-sex.
It's sent one off the advantage.
This isn't. It's not even. Fair warning. Oh, like this part isn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just like, it's not.
I was like, which
set even.
which part?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's must face you, I guess, of course.
Don't show me the face right here.
Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Is anybody not ready? The domestic space of the U.S. is not a geographical location, but temporal and spatial capacity for the human galaxy, transcendence of fixed location into universality. The human's rudeness in the landscape is enabled through the functional black bodies that expand the master sediment in their indigenous cloak fashioned out of dead native skin. King 13 answers their ontology offense. King 13. Settling sources temporal friends with the origins of settling and settling from urban and sources of positive and settling whose that use of base from Atlantic seven shot the ocean and seas of western native commerce settling to those bodies of material station diamonds and western space with western settling cozy ontological categories are by the seven stems certain parts of making unequal making and making subdivisions levels like the states of municipality and predicated in the fixed native rabbis of seven of number presidents who gratuitously found the project because the native became less bigger and the country states of elements and decided that the cellular separation is claim is only spoken of as the another cell of human is a static place where it is absent in indigenous bodies relation to the sun also cellars and indigenous themselves to this absent shapes and the vision of this people show that they generated the natives determined by this thing also shape process as a cause of the sanitation the same claim by what two because of this but they cannot make this impossible or by way from is a place being not a place for human so making place what a human place is home structure they use it as land people to go to the southern pancakes or nature the concept of places under trying to send people to nature to work with the native places that it's not in case by themselves the most legal and settlement subdivision fixing other state of Boston of the celebrations and the state of Venus the every popularity replace non universal object is to be human is have a guard of identity is having a existence in a Roman time or space and humanity maintains its coherence through the diselection of racialized and sexualized bodies transforming the lands they inhabit into dead toxic and horrific spaces in Hendrickson 13. Native reservations, 20 gender and formal segregations are some of the ways in which the lands is known and contradictory and it was united to the indigenous, non-indigenous, African colonial kingdoms, century has not referred to the reconstructive second governance difference in good differential process common sense of the resource revision combination and evidence of access to the military section handled by impoverished community of the background so the artificial and life system of the constitution has caused them to know that something to be able to live in live connection so much as to that over and over life is extracted from a particular region trains some place named of the human jargon says this place is considered lifeless one to catch the relations gathers over to global south the world is the logical by the main to another actually like the dynamic ranges that has the jobs under his members made functions of spots in the global world. And the asphyxiation of violence and oppression over there is a tactic to distract and mass violence over here. Attempts to assist others reinforce choices of passivity within settler colonialism and trivializes instances of refusal. Corntassel 14. Things are delayed with first agenda for relocation where I just and justice their victims there so we have some cases we're not going to look here because they're really peaceful so are the directing goals responsibility and magnifying gave us further away and the one sees anything but a departure from the status quo by submitting to the endless drive for selling futurity. The app secures itself through native death and imperialist warfare. Shot in 18. The production, death, and inauguration of religious more constitutional by the South Living Saudi civilization with death, American savages, so sought to release the timelessness and the failure for movement because savage American people are united the honest signatures of this word of civil and civil society. Sovereignty gained reform was in their secret and the place of the time to connect to the unconditionality. There's no representation on representation it seeks to constantly raise itself with the new conditions of the operation of the successful and patrick men to face in the entirely neither side marriages people are in fact also the past of the here and now. features and purpose of the phase of meaning visualization, legislation by definite consequence of our as the endeavors have is nurtured to mean the features, justification, dogs, and features, judges, capable to traffic, they follow the voice and the business, realize obstacles, features, and otherwise success, relations, all good sort of destruction, force of managing features and failings for transfer, remove, extermination, the war, mass conservation, disease, and features, nutrition, driving, never friendly, sense, behold, to treat, and they must reduce one to death to order to continue to winning survival, civilization for itself, establish abuse, as he sat there with the cell party itself, can only sustain itself, is answer because impossible to resolve dynamic, but seeing living the enemy's own order, that must allow it to overcome what it is. They cannot rest on the last trait from it is little, and such as the settlement penalty, which you will do in common on the fundamental basis of freedom of start contract with the native citizens, they must rely on the interests that settlement foundation by blood or sound nature to these spaces and pure securities that many enemies about this ever expecting to simply was required to preserve the status quo. And treating settler violence as a thing with the past creates a history that enables the violence of white futurity. Knowing the past comes to be equated with the end of violence. Tuck it all 13. Cell-clinic critical part place invested in cell fertility, we work with the present cell is only the production of pathway we work with cell clinics and configurations of the future replacement parties by cell fertility refers to the way in which the future is what inevitable through specific prices and turning needs on the present what is price and reproduces a post-geological sum that white racism can be modernized the way future gives the future to archaeological form because the type of cell fertility anything is not in our cell but the reform settlement incorporating indigenous people is better to cell fertility and sort of host cell economy and cell epistemologies. And this is a concrete alternative. We refuse to affirm the AFCEL expansion. Our localized refusal interrupts the smooth operation of power and the authority of the state and throws into doubt the entire system of North American rectitude. Ferguson 14. Resistance implied that all political beliefs must be resistance by them to collected attitudes, politics, market-based that as a priest officer, redeploying their seven or negotiations to already such a dynamics. This in opposition with operations of power, denying presumed authority and making ordinance, impure opposition, and drag freeze not to give authorities game over resistance, given operations of power, refusal denies that religion through the state claims, monopoly violence, whose different dynamics of religion, state capacity, where the state claims to determine laws should be followed, so to reverse internal ministers of rationalize and duties, resistance can respond to persuasion, refusal come over the arching operations, refusal to send out and the rectitude states out of the political system, out of the utilization of the territory population, with recognized as like enemy adjustment, so before resistance we can be negotiated or recognized positioning the people of the versus been the lack of justice and the proper response is a refusal to system historical truth belonging to genetic the pieces of reality to something and not legalisms or legitimacy fundamental ontological fixated refusal circulated reminder that nations have decided from the past present and future experience of any purposes on history social controls and large basis of truth like issues the most refusal inherent in becoming sense practices social science itself is an active refusal mohawk and is causal harm readers everything action collectively through different value curve political directions and refusal as a political theoretical concept included in shared practice. And try or die to forefront anti-settler colonial praxis. The continuation of the settler-dominated world perpetuates a transversal structural violence that culminates in exchange. The decay is a prereq until 17. Transversal structural violence against people relations, colon eventually code self-colon code rejects environmental racism and land-based violence, ecology, division, emergence, politics, colonialism, more structural violence, as a drive extinction, self-destruction, indigenous forms of knowledge, processes, of appropriation, culture appropriation, their studies, sediments, forms of knowledge, relations, and the nature, colonial genocide, body, this one suggestion by killing displaced indigenous communities, sedimenting indigenous Muslim governments, conceptions, of knowledge, relations, free life, friendly, raising knowledge, colonial violence, particular environmental drives, global conversation, consultation, focus on examination, relations are insufficient. They leave structures of violence, in fact, made the part of the extinction, need to focus on identifying, converting, disability, formations of violence, the efforts of the global population, rolling within scientific concepts of conservation strategies often involve displacing indigenous people. This is colonists and attached exacerbating confronting global extinction with decolonization is not simply whether to go about extinction necessary to ensure the ongoing global life forms of Earth. And case. All NATO allied countries have interchangeable weapon systems. That means that even if we remove U.S. weapons, any other Europe country can fill in and blanket circumvent it. Trump empirics and 19. Trump is going to emerge into the circumvention oversight what emergency conflict countries, State Department, Pentagon, will structure running against U.S. forces if it needs to avoid the rationalized and warfare between itself and the rationalized arms in Saudi Arabia is on about capitalism of the military industrial complex. And Saudi turns to Russia and China when the U.S. pulls out terminal solvency deficit and turns case because it allows the U.S. to pretend that they resolve violence in Yemen and tout themselves as a good Western country in the face of Russian and Chinese violence. Track 18. If the U.S. moved to naval station Saudi Arabia, Saudis will continue doing business with China and Russia. Saudi Arabia is negotiating business with Russians and Chinese. The writers increasing Western power is not necessarily new books or acceleration to diversification, but change in operating aids in the ocean brings back as a long-standing policy could be their Canadians, but the forthcoming sanctions, obviously, Chinese policy non-interference would make sense for them. And arms sales are distinct from maintenance and logistics. Our author concludes that violence can be sustained even after the plan because they still can use existing weapon systems. That means that they don't solve violence in Yemen or end the training and upkeep of already existing weapons. So when you see Goodman 18, it is important to separate arms systems, maintenance, and logistics from the weapons. Later, more enemy defects in Yemen, they need to separate spare parts, they need their training. And native countries won't follow on, and the AF is not a commitment to the principle of opposition to genocide, but it is in line with our own interests. Algeria is 19, if you have any more cross, I can read them. Germany responded with 6 of the ban of the course which continued to ignore calls for action. France and Britain criticized Berlin after extended arms ban with concerns about the effect on the defense industry. UK sources when it was sales the British government appeals to Italy is paying for its policy. The country lacks the missiles, they're really seeking their own interests.
Anything else from you?
Yeah, we're good.
Can you send out the
Yeah,
cards?
The case or.
the case
they're
is
not-
not,
oh,
I think
did
you
I not
forgot to
save it?
press
Okay.
save. Yeah, I was gonna say
Sorry,
something.
it says, let's see.
Did you save did you send the wrong email?
I've got like cards that are like answers to regional pro-life.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
not,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, I was in the wrong, yeah, sorry about that. It's the same,
The off case is fine.
Yeah.
like
yeah, the off case
and
is the same, but
case
it's,
arguments.
yeah, sorry about that, I was in the wrong folder. Okay, let me know when you got that.
Just arrived.
You ready?
Yeah.
The critique, how does reducing arms sales to decrease Saudi's involvement in Yemen create settlement or recreate the idea of settlement?
Right, so we're going to argue that this is a form of gentile colonialism insofar as the U.S. uses arms sales abroad as a tool of imperialism. Like they construct certain countries and narratives of certain countries in a way to either justify selling arms to them
I'm sorry,
or
but
justify the
I'm
removal of
sort
arms
of
sales.
confused. The
Yeah.
app limits the arms trade. You said that the arms trade creates that.
Right. So we're saying that the U.S. can construct countries in whatever manner can justify either the removal of arms sales or like the increase of arms sales. We're not saying that like there's a myth of negative state action insofar as the U.S. is a good liberal country.
Wait, you still haven't answered my question. How does the 1AC, reduction of arms sales to Saudi Arabia,
Right.
recreate the
Right.
logic of
The
settlement?
reduction of arms sales in this form of U.S. gentile colonialism, the policy of arms sales abroad is a tool. Yes. go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry. So your Goodman 18 evidence does a really good job of isolating that it's not a liberal reformist policy, right? It's not like a we're going to remove the U.S. Rather, it says specifically that threatening support for Saudi Arabia's war machine can serve a variety of purposes. First, such levers present a potentially significant stick in carrot for achieving policy goals that are broader than the Yemen war. The goal of the AF, the authors who isolate like liberal reformist politics of the AF are never in an attempt to solve for Yemeni violence, right? Like the AF tries to say it is. Rather, it is a stick and carrot, to quote your Goodman 18 evidence, to achieve the U.S.'s policy goals within that region.
Why does that indicate? Wait, I'm confused as to why that.
It's a proliferation of like U.S. praxis power internationally.
I
reduction of
control
arms
that
sales
game.
is a
I
tool of
can't
U.S.
see
policy.
it in good.
It's literally in Goodman. It's like Goodman 18. You can control F. Just do like stick and carrot. And it's literally in there. Threatening support for Saudi Arabia's war machine can serve a variety of purposes. First, such levers present a potentially significant stick and carrot for achieving policy goals that are broader for the Yemen war.
Okay, if we prove that that line doesn't indicate
The-
U.S. imperialism, why?
It
What is
does.
the link?
It
Okay,
does.
Where is it in the next sentence? Does it indicate that it's for imperialism?
As Senator Marco Rubio stated earlier on this month, CNN State of the Union, all arms sales are important because it provides leverage over their future behavior. That is the next line.
Right, but that's behavior of Saudi Arabia. not
Right, that's the
behavior-
U.S. trying to assert dominance over Saudi Arabia.
This is a
Okay.
tool of U.S. policy goals abroad that are inherently invested
Right.
in seller futurity.
Okay.
You can't no link out of one of the 5 cards you read as the 1AC actual plan.
No. I can't see how you go.
Okay, it's gonna be a case in the order of Yemen and method, then the case.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
746.
Awesome. Thank you.
You guys got it, right?
Yeah. Look at that poster.
Okay, is anybody not ready?
Thousands of Yemenis are being murdered by direct commercial assaults of the U.S. in the status quo. The plane quickly shuts down the Saudi coalition and to grant track capabilities for operation in Yemen. This ends the war and jumps to peace negotiations. That's when you see Goodman and onto the line by my NATO allies. Country doesn't matter. The U.S. makes up 60% of the imports and enacting more genocide, so it doesn't matter. And this is Trump circumvents, but durable fiasco. The debate should be about should, not would. And this is failing, but the U.S. and Morocco gets Europe to follow in Saudi Arabia can't switch supplies. That's covertly 18 selling weapons discouraged in Saudi Arabia without finding the difference. One, and this is unlikely even in the long term. Saudi Arabia is in the middle of the war, and major war to truly squeeze the economy and Morocco do not relatively easy, and Europe feels strong suppression to export just forming in the Saudis to employ Russian weapons do not cause the fortune of the required use of retraining and good with just military power. Russia cannot put the next generation fighters that attract tanks and missiles, and China has imports the system of Saudi Arabia wanted, and they say violence can be sustained, but DCS is maintenance means if we reduce it, violence will be reduced itself. In the and the last code, the decrease genocide by eliminating armed cells. That's not in the U.S. interest. Decreasing armed cells directly decrease genocide. I did the work above in the overview on certificate. Method. Our priority as students should be condemning the atrocities committed by our government and the narrative used to justify them. That's when you see Craig calling out the government hypocrisy is a matter of the state sanctioned murder abroad is educational and good and onto the K. Framework, the role of balance is determined the desirability of the plan versus the OB. They enter with arbitrary and moods the entire of the YNC, which undermines fairness and destroys topic application by wishing away institution. Debates over narrow policy goals are valuable for broader changes. That's YNC, Federation of American Scientists, and the question for the debate is how most effectively changes on trade policies. It's more strategical used to deploy them in support of specific policy changes. That's YNC Bolton and Minor 16 and Perm to both and Perm to the plan and non-mutually exclusive, and imagining a repurpose of geopolitical power is good only the permutation solves. That's VMA 14, the relation between the power and geography. Dr. the economic geography policy making, and the geography is too important to be left to the geographers, but it is more important to be left to politicians and critical analysis regarding policy processes often tend to be rejected. The power center of the speedo analysis over the knowledge and the extent of the level of radical changes as space is mattering. The policy making can be true in the cannot be absolute, and the geographical research regarding the policy process in one way to reveal the shortcomings of the policy making and the plea is fully based on the views of the social sciences cannot be the distinction for policy cycles, and they're wrong about indigenous progress as no scat. 17, if a cellular society is construction depending upon the living of the native, we cannot expect the survival resilient reagents of the same native and the indigenous right have gained the ground. The indigenous people pressure the state and build it on the land, take it from then in the Indian utility for the tribe bureau control and the ceremonies for the red power movement, and the Indian can become independent federal control, and these remarkable victories indigenous people are for the politicians and a concession of provided indigenous nations with the access of the government as well political, economic and legal leverage, and the movement may remain resolute of the politics is the long game and strategy. Resistance is in fact forward when impaired with the persuasion and framing settler colonialism as a shock show creates essentialism and destroy resistance by grouping all non-indigenous people as settler turns the old as bigger 17 of defense of the settler colonial society through the differentiation between the structure and the infant re-articulate the problematics of the structuralism and treat society as the fixed and coincident structuralism generate the history of the political problem, not to mention the essentialism and even the condition by the intersectionalities of the extraordinary of the events of the political entities and the possibility of the ultimate discontinuing the discolonization remains the problematic society as the objectively settled structure is not consistent of the cut of the struggle over the power and the knowledge and the additional history of intersectional methods of radical the general consultation over the within the ongoing colonial forces of the years and policy. We need to be careful by grouping all the racial ethnic dysphoria and the American community as a with settler and linked to the plan is a form of negative state action that takes power away from the state by continuing the genocide in Yemen and group. They both are linked together. First, there's two reasons why we don't link. First, the arguments make the court makes an argument that we should focus on only one specific violence. That focusing on only one violence shifts violence elsewhere in the world and doesn't make us focus on the violence that's actually happening in Yemen specifically. That ignores that specific type of violence and just backlash and creates more violence. And two, if we ignore our own policies, we're ignoring the violence that's happening through our foreign policies, which we're not able to actually solve it. And no being king is descriptive of settlement. That's not the act because it attempts to end themselves, to end Saudi involvement in the war and change the behavior that makes arms a stick and character make Saudi less aggressive. Yeah, and policy focus is important and necessary. That's 909 laws surrounding the ivory tower have never seen so high, and so many of the scholars are going to the government and scholars are paying less attention to the policies and focus on the new method of the methodology, the theories, expression of the Jordan of the unintelligible of the policy makers and the academic have made an obligation to help improve the policy that the engagement of can enhance the enrich of academic work, which all would raise the question regarding the preparation of the new generation and the future influence of the academic community, official perception of the scholar teaching the method relevant not to the majority of the students, and the opponent should give the greater weight of the more relevant and cross-apply the one and see Papa's evidence from the framing. So pragmatic policy making should be centered on empirical context that is contingent and specific to removing removing self-violence does not have a single casual explanation, but can reduce it by voting out and all self-abstract ethics. Never mind. Yeah, and should I read the old one? And the old double bind, either the old is just a critical pedagogy, in which case will not be able to be strong enough to overcome 300 years of colonial logic, or the old will become more revolutionary action to overthrow the colonialistic logic. If the matter is true, then the old shouldn't be voted for because of the violence and great scales that it will have to case to.
It's not the same content.
Okay.
No.
Go back
It's
to the content.
It's the same content. You want to read it?
I think we're fine. Yeah. Okay, we got it.
You ready? So let's talk about this follow-on argument. How does the plan result in other countries following on?
Sure. Those countries, because the U.S. is seen as the model country, it gets other countries, especially in Europe, to actually, to state on themselves.
So in a world where, I believe Britain and France are condemning Germany for stopping the sale of arms to Saudi Arabia, why would these countries want to, follow on to the U.S.?
Oh, what do you mean?
Like they've condemned another European country for doing this action. Why would they agree with the U.S.?
Because that's the will.
The Cavalier evidence talks about how there's already domestic pressure in France and the UK to end arms sales. If the U.S. ends arms sales, that pressure not only increases because if Trump was to say, we're ending arms sales, that puts significant pressure because Trump is seen as a leader who is incompetent and unable to lead the U.S. If he was to do it, he would look like a more ethical leader, and that puts pressure on other leaders in the UK and France to also look ethical.
Okay, sure. What does the world of the perm look like? Like, how does this operate?
Sure. The perm was still, rejecting the self-colonial mindset in a way, and we're eliminating themselves to Saudi Arabia. Negative state action.
I guess that leads me into my next question, which how does the plan take power away from the state?
On cells, is used as a way for the U.S. to control over nations.
But like,
Reducing that
your-
means the state won't have control.
your own evidence isolates that the plan is another instance of the U.S. using arms
Yes,
sales as a
And
tool.
reducing that is good.
But your authors argue that
That
is
reducing
that.
arms sales to Saudi Arabia is good.
Okay,
What the act says.
all right, sure. Why is fairness good?
Was fairness good?
Yeah,
I guess-
on the frame.
Oh, sure. Fairness is good because, like, in a way, if we don't have fairness, then like we don't have like substantial amount of like arguments to give on decay or like to say on decay in a way, and that takes away like the whole like I guess like fairness and like the topic knowledge and education you get from this round.
All right, why is topic knowledge key?
Topic knowledge is key because I mean we're here for a reason, right? To have like we're debating to get like more knowledge on how actual debate work and actual like how arms cells and foreign policy works. So getting that topic knowledge means we are able to go out in the world and actually like apply it.
How does the perm overcome this alt double bind?
The firm,
Yeah.
I guess like I would say like negative figure action.
Right, but how does that prevent like these examples? Like, what's the warrant for that?
The alt double blind is a reason why the alt doesn't solve. the
Right, but
alt.
the perm would have it.
We'll use some prep starting now. Okay.
I have them always counting. And, okay, answering, they have people, they should comments and focus on comments. I'm just gonna answer this in comments.
Stop prep. We have 608. Cool. And I'm reading 2 cards. Can I just send them in the email, in the body of the email?
What's that?
I'm just reading 2 cards. Can I send them in the body of the email, or do y'all want to talk?
I mean,
I'll
I
make
probably prefer a doc, but
Okay.
that's totally up to them.
I do.
I can just make a
If he
document
doesn't
with
care,
us.
you put him in the email, it's fine.
Right.
Both of you are fine with that.
Okay. They're in the doc. They're in the doc. Everyone should have them in their emails.
Is everybody good?
I just got it.
Okay, cool.
It's just a query.
Yes.
If it matters for your flows, if you split up the K, I'll take the cardinal.
Yeah, actually it does.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Permutation and what?
And the alt.
So I'll have a bit of an overview link, or a bit of an overview framework then link.
Settler colonialism is a structure that coheres the status quo as a settler breach of frivolity. For the settler to transcend into a continually revised state of humanism, they require both the native and the slave to exist in a position of neither time nor space. Think about it like this: settler colonialism and anti-blackness are two different theories, but the project of humanity is only perfected through the intersection or the triad. The K always turns the case for two reasons. First, structural analysis is a prerequisite to the coherence of the impact of the affirmative means you err and face. They just don't understand how the world works. Extend the shot in evidence. It gives a really good explanation as to how the system leads to foreign wars. Sovereigns engage in foreign wars in interest of securing their domestic subjects, and two, the gap becomes a smokescreen for the papering over of settler violence and creates systems of settler innocence. They ask 1% solvency framing is an independent link to the K because they don't want to grapple with the implications of the epistemology of the forward, and more specifically, don't have to. On framing, the role of the judge is to be a critical intellectual. Debate should be a place where we analyze our epistemological assumptions first. This leads to dogmatic debates with the blanket assumptions where we can compare the implications of structure that exists in our arguments. The role of the validist is to orient the everyday spatiality of colonialism and proving this argument, but negative on presumption because we have one questioning point, we have one starting point, a question of starting points as to how settlerism operates counter-interpretation. Instead, they have to defend the epistemological assumptions of the 1AC framing rather than the procedural question that settler colonialism cannot be separated from the content of the plan because it is hardwired to structure into the assumptions of plan and the impact to affirm to be first is the plan focus that said that 1 AC is 8 minutes and the plan is 5 seconds. Make them defend all 8 minutes. A fiat is a luxury. We don't actuate material policy in this room, but we can change those political representations being the most important thing in the space of the representations we forward and B. Plan focus papers over in-round instances of settler dominant violence and reifies debates violent nature, proves their interprets bad debaters, bad debates and even worse debaters like Carl Rosen see their interpretation skews ground to the absence. It allows teams to win despite having racist justification. This turns portable skills, education, and procedural fairness because the translators use the violent nature of debate to sever out of racist justification. The choice of discussion is not in a value neutral, but a consequence of narrative framing. The 1AC is a static artifact, and their attempts to escape that initial framing is in and of itself its form of violence. That's Kepler 95. In terms of formulation, the question of one political attitude to what subjects in the whole of speech or what issues that explode from moving acts or what objectify to be relevant part of the speech when we can against other acts objectifying we have to consequences are for less disruption and the price of price diagnosis of our independence the analysis while the hard discourse by abuse power nothing present questioning the language you can take for a step forward the change in political reality and the other your own willing to question or use the language willing to use power privilege and use it. 2 is fairness. A fairness is never neutral is structurally privileged team with a bunch of coasting. B defending your reps is inherent to be the plan is informed by your advantages, which means that when your assumptions are flawed or bad, then so too is your plan text. And D3 is education. A don't default to settler common sense for the sake of education. Challenge the epistemic basis for action is a prerequisite to determine the best approach toward resolving the 1AC and B return their education. They don't actually confront the structures that accumulate to cause the violence as they outline. Means ours is net better and has the reps net benefit, and utilitarian framing should never come first as the flawed method for risk calculation depends solely on settlement plantation grammar of human being and human. It doesn't take into account gratuitous violence against black people, nor the settlement, nor the genocide of millions of native people. Don't let them tell you that they're not utilitarian framing. They have literally given you a number of hundreds of thousands of people at the top of the 1AC. They're going to try and use these bodies against us. And but even if you get them utilitarian framing, win for 3 reasons. First, their impact should not need. They don't access the root cause. You have to preserve structural reasons why the state engages in war making in the first place. Why you have them in impact they can't even solve for. And 2, root cause means only the alternative can actually impact the foundation of North American settler righteousness. We don't need to. We don't solvency to impact to win the impact outweighs. Mitchell 17 is really good on this question. Settler colonialism is the glue that holds together U.S. sovereignty, and that's like the ability for the F's impact to exist in the first place. And 3, Mitchell 17 is a conceded extinction level impact. Settler colonialism is the only scenario that ensures 100% extinction due to the resource extortion which catalyzes climate change and the extermination of certain populations, which is already happening. So we are on time frame magnitude and likelihood, and on the ontology to extend Kitrick 13, the settler is secured by the ontological positioning of genocide and fungibility. The genocide of the native clears the land with the fungibility of black and occupies and noise cat flows and egg and things like Save Oak Float Act aren't successful because in a world where Jeff Sessions controlled House, Russ Scotus and Adaptable investors are president. Serial policy failures inevitable because of things like because of things like the deferral of the Save Oak Float to subcommittees of subcommittees or other native political changes being rolled back. This is happening in the status quo and like noise cat literally flows and egg.
This is the evidence recutting. Colonial retaliations of power are no longer reproduced primarily through overtly coercive means, but rather through asymmetric changes of mediated forms of state recognition and accommodation. Proves that the absent political change is literally predicated off assimilation politics on the root cause debate. It's not unfair or the misunderstanding that these are the metaphysical question we reason claiming proximate causes first leads to bad forms of debate because A, we don't confront our biases, we don't engage with the structural analysis of the world, B, this turns our study on premium because it proves any split up claims aren't actually real world, rather just dog whistles towards respectability politics, which replicates the method of the act, and their interpretation means you should be highly skeptical of the reasoning, but we'll explain the balance of the White Sea better than they do. After that, British started colonizing most of the Middle East post-dissolution of the Ottoman Empire. They imposed boundaries of the political Middle East. They didn't use existing lines and thus they divided huge ethnic groups like Kurds. British colonial rule split up those people and caused things like ethnic war and genocide, which explains why the violence of the Apads that happens in the first place. Saudi Arabia's position of the arbiter of power initially was predicated off of their being the pet of the British Empire. The US did the same thing with them after the British pulled out. This also explained why we use things like the genteel colonialism of the Act to assert dominance internationally through praxis states. If we want the best explanation for violence of the 1AC, you should refer a method because we are the only team that actually understands why that violence even happens in the first place. When we root cause, we win the debate even if there's even if they win there, any risk of their impact is the reason the case turns the case. There's zero chance they solve for genocide. There's at least the chance that the alt solves on the link debate. We have two really good links, all independent. This as to the affirmative. First is the fiat link. Fiat implementation of the plan allows the after hypothesis to hypothesize about real world violence against other people and pat themselves in the back after an battle. At least the literal saviors and tactics within the debate space. They don't get to just weigh the app because they stood up and read it. So it's the same rhetoric as solving Yemeni genocide. Gut check. They don't. Their own evidence undercuts this. And second is the genteel colonialism link takes on the cortassal evidence, distraction tactics from the domestic violence, or attempt by the settler state to imagine itself as a perfect settler beach of equality and pivot activists away from ontological issues in the U.S. to structural causes internationally. The app uses these distraction mechanisms and the force of fetishization of violence against Yemeni people to distract from violence, the domestic police brutality, the Dakota Acts of Pipeline, and much more, but I don't need to reinvent the wheel. This creates a global image of the U.S. as the ultimate savior for poor nations to claim at the gates of the 1AC is the very embodiment of the saviors, but the U.S. is also to blame for this violence against Yemeni people through things like private ops. We're also to blame. Don't let them claim they're anti-state or liberal reform. Their Goodman-18 evidence says, quote, threatening support for Saudi Arabia's war machine can serve a variety of purposes. First, such levers present a potentially significant stake in carrot for achieving policy goals that are broader than Yemen war, and it goes further to cite Senator Marco Rubio. Arms sales are important because it provides leverage over their future behavior, which they will need our spare parts, they will need our training, and those are things that we can use to influence their behavior. Don't let them say that they're only about solving the war in Yemen. They're not making Saudi less aggressive. It's literally for broader U.S. political investment. They have to about reducing U.S. control, but about modifying our control over Saudi Arabia and the Middle East writ large, just logically to continue U.S. interventionism to distract from the domestic concerns you have, because it leads to even more settler saviorism that proliferates U.S. war-making and interventionist policy. We might remove arms sales, but we don't remove our settler dominance. The 1AC wants to, quote, shake the arms relation to clip MBS's wings. Think about it. The U.S. armed Saudi Arabia to check regional threats to the image of the unstable Middle East, but now those arms have allowed the U.S. to proliferate images of violence against Yemeni people that continue the distraction project. This means that regional stability is impossible. The is never about resolving that violence, but using that image as the launching point for us making sense of ourselves. Yemenis as the enfeebled object creates an addictive narrative of paternalism, which is then traded in for ballots, which makes debate become attached to this type of narrative. They use race to flatten down ethnicality to select how bodies should be written into the 1AC. It's only a moment to make the USFG look good through this hypercodification. They need a rational or irrational actor looking through this coding onto Yemenis, frame the app not as a nice gesture of reduction of arms sales by the US, but instead of a global parasitic logic of white saviors. And don't be confused with the 1AC's claim if we do a nice thing, the alt solves the saviors only by refusal, which removes the option for an ethical imagination of a federally state. They say that we're shifting focus away from one of the most important violence against Yemeni people, but we're not the Tuck and Yang. They conceded Tuck and Yang evidence proves the rest of our colonialism is a structure, not an event. It's not like one singular instance of violence that we're distracting away from. It is a root cause debate. If we win the root cause debate, it means that there is no chance that we are distracting away from another instance of violence. There's no link turn. I've already proved why it's not genteel colonialism. The app, They say that the purpose evidence is answered on the root cause debate. They conceded the root cause debate, and the only explanation of this violence of the 1AC forwarded in the debate in the one it means that you should prefer. Yeah, it means that you should prefer root causes rather than approximate causes, because the settlement of the Middle East and the division up of the Middle East arbitrarily has created divisions between Kurdish people and specifically Saudi Arabian, the idealization of the Saudi Arabian people as net better than other people in the region. It's an attempt for the Saudis to gain more political power within the Middle East and to continue the US's world project of world ordering.
Ready?
Sure.
I guess you made this role of ballot argument. What does voting next do?
In the context of the role of the ballot?
In a way to spell over.
Well, disorienting the everyday spatiality of colonialism kind of subverts the continuance of like the settler project, if that makes sense. Right, like the refusal of the affirmative representation is the way that you can disrupt the way that.
refusing, oh sorry.
No, go ahead.
How will refusing, I guess, like, thesis of D1AC, I guess, like, stop the war in Yemen?
Well, we're not going to argue that we necessarily need to stop the war in Yemen because that, in and of itself, is predicated off of the idea that the U.S. should have power over like global world ordering. But rather, we're saying that like refusing those representations, that like the affirmative forwards of like the U.S. needing to control Saudi Arabia politically is like something that we would say is
we
bad.
isolated that the U.S. is the primary reason why the war is ongoing in Yemen. Why wouldn't removing arms cells actually like not reduce that violence?
Right, so your Goodman 18 evidence isolates, I mean, like I've said over and over in cross-examinations, and like the explanation of the settler saviorism link, or like the genteel colonialism link, is that like the U.S. might pull arms out of Saudi Arabia, but that's not an attempt to decrease U.S. engagement in Saudi Arabia. That's only an attempt to continue the project of like the U.S. political investment within the Middle East.
So it's just like, I guess like white slavery.
It plays into a tautology of settler colonialism.
That's fine.
So it's like, we're gonna remove the arms, and disrupting that arms sales to Saudi Arabia will force them to cohere to what we imagine to be like a good engagement, right? Like the US is like, well, we don't want to be connected or affiliated with the war against Yemeni people. We're going to force Saudi Arabia to not do that,
Sure,
i.e. like removing arms, which just continues the project of like the US not wanting to look like a bad settler.
You made this
and also-
argument about how like noise cat flows net,
Yes.
but the code isolates two reasons of why, I guess like utilizing the law, especially with indigenous bodies.
Actually-
with Standing Rock, Indian, New Deal, and direct power movement. How does the argument like disprove these three important like?
Right, so like NoiseCat also isolates the fact that like colonial relations of power are no longer reduced primarily through only coercive means, i.e. like the political, but rather through asymmetric exchanges of mediated forms of state recognition and accommodation. Like it forces Native and Indigenous people to assimilate into like what kind of the standard idea of like Native people is. So like for example, when like Native people go to courts, a lot of times they are forced to wear like Native, like the traditional garb of like Native people to be seen as truly Native. It forces that assimilation politics into like what is traditionally seen as truly Native, i.e. things like random blood quantum checks or like random white card checks on reservations. Like those are all forms of like.
I guess like that's fine.
Okay.
I have one more question.
Cool.
The impact calculus you did, you said you hour in magnitude. What I guess like is your impact in a way of like utilitarian way?
Oh, we're just saying that like if you're going to go for utilitarian framing, the Mitchell 17 evidence does a really good job of isolating that settler colonialism is the only extinction level impact.
I have one card on case. Can I just send it in the body of the email?
Sure. I mean, I don't know, do you all have a preference?
No.
The order will be case, the advantage. Then perm, then alt on the kill. Is anybody not ready? Extend loop necting. Trump circumvents the plan. The declaration of a national emergency proves that he won't stop selling arms to Saudi Arabia. Durable fiat isn't sufficient. They should have to engage with what their plan actually looks like when it's implemented and fill in absent U.S. arms sales. Russia and China will fill in. We don't have to win the Russian-China tech allows Saudi Arabia to be a global hegemon, but rather that they can supply weapons that will kill civilians. And even if they win that Russia and Chinese tech isn't sufficient, NATO allies have compatible weapon systems, which overcomes their card about how they can't change weapon suppliers. So any ally could fill in, and Europe still sells arms to Saudi Arabia, which means that there's no barrier to fill in. And Russia and China fill in contributes to to the notion of U.S. exceptionalism, which is the logic of the settler state used to justify its existence and relieve guilt of the ongoing genocide of Native people. They just said that U.S. follows on, but the words are lacking. Trump means that Europe won't follow on because they don't respect his decision-making. Pretty much all European leaders hate him, and also Europe condemned Germany, which shows that internal pressure is not enough to overcome the financial motives to sell arms to Saudi Arabia. And their cavalry card concludes that training and support aren't stopped at the pen. Follow on only says happens with a coordinated embargo, not unilateral actions. Coordination requires a negotiated process that is not mandated by the app. GOC Cavalry 18. Saudi relies on American tapes and nations for daily support and mind and control. Coordinated embargo would be necessary. There are two top-level framing issues with the first is the cellular fluidity dissent. They promise attempt to perfect and call the theory of the cellular contagion from authors like Kipton King without having to grapple them. In the one, you see the premise they sell move to innocence to absolve their guilt of the offshoots that they realize cellular cleanse. This is an independent reason that the aspect of energy is flawed in an inbound instance of the app using instances of violence like genocide, Yemeni people to justify their ability. They reified the cellular state and also propagate these images of suffering like the top of the 2AC when they talked about how thousands are being murdered to justify their ballot. And in an attempt to secure the future of the cellular, reject the perm for this flight ideology, have a very high threshold for anybody out there tries to tell you that we need to solve genocide. It proves that their method to uses its images of violence to paper over their attempts to revive cellular cleansing by its domination. And second is the move to innocence is that the perm co-ops the alt's refusal, even if they win that they're negative state action endorsing the state's authority at all, means that the alt is inevitably co-opted the idea that the perm can solve any part of cellular cleansing is inherently flawed. Davos is an instance in which Native people literally sat on the land and refused to acknowledge the U.S.'s right to build the North Dakota Access Pipeline, and Obama repealed the North Dakota Access Pipeline, but later pro-reformist movements wanted to engage political, and Trump reinstated the pipeline, which also allows Trump to create the image of the insubordinate savage, which proves that this is just a move to innocence that recreates defiance, and all links are dissents to the perm crossed by the links from the two NCs. Independent dissents. If we win a risk of a link, they don't get the perm. On perm to both the app and the order mutually exclusive refusal can't be permitted with another strategy. We refuse to recognize the sovereignty of the U.S. and refuse the app. You can't do the app and refuse it. The explanation they gave for the perm was incoherent. They just it's negative state action on the app and do not the mutually exclusive parts of the alt. I don't really need a different answer to this because the app and the order mutually exclusive. You can't refuse U.S. sovereignty and the app reps and do the plan that goes through the U.S.'s right to sell arms. On the VMA card, this is about reimagining borders, not disrupting cellular colonialism. There's really no more warrant for how this accomplishes any praxis of decolonization or incorporates refusal. This is not about the alt, and it doesn't say anything about cellular colonialism. Okay. The ultimate. The Cherokee Nation will crossing presented passports at the Heathrow airport instead of U.S. passports that had been forced on Native people. They presented treaties that Britain had made with Native people and refused to leave the airport until they were let in. Refusal to leave Heathrow allows them to gain access as well as fracture solvent narratives of colonialism. This is an instance of refusal and the assertion of Native sovereignty over the sovereignty of the colonizer. And the alternative, through the epistemological sense of the one AC, Saudi Arabia is always made fungible through the as masculine relation to space. The others either threatening and need to be protected even from us, but we are always the subject and they're always the object of study, which replicates a violent mode of othering at the heart of the colonial project. Arms sales are just a chess piece for us to move around a U.S.-controlled geopolitical world. This orientation continues a project of U.S. world ordering that has produced countless interventions like Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Kosovo, coups in countries like Iran and Cuba and Ecuador. It makes it possible for the U.S. to represent innocent civilians as good, but can contrast them to the Houthis or the Saudi Arabians to prepare for the next intervention. Wrote Neg, this orientation of the world continues a process of center schooling and mastery over space and operates from a God's-eye perspective that authorizes unlimited violence, and the alt is an injunction to the epistemological process of the app. It's prior to their ability to access any solvency, because before we do the plan, they have to justify the plan with these cards, and if our links are through their cards, the plan text is incoherent without their snare, so you need to evaluate the alt before their plan. They said it structural destroys resistance. This is a link to Wolf, not King. King theorizes the theory of the triad, which resolves their link about essentializing the native and the settler, because we also account for the native, the settler, and the slave. Also, this settler colonialism is a useful analytic to understand U.S. actions. They said all double fine. First of all, we're not the French Revolution. Refusal is not the same thing as literally violent revolution. We don't argue that we solve settler colonialism. This logic relies on the idea that we can solve settler colonialism, which is inherently flawed and is a settler myth. My alt explanation should clarify why this is not like a violent revolution that will overthrow colonialism. This literally relies on the logic that we solve settler colonialism. We are a praxis of decolonization. On conduit, again, this is about Zizek, not decolonization or its refusal, and it relies on the logic of solving settler colonialism. Also, we have a vision for the alt.
746, starting.
226. The order will be the advantage, then the critique, straight down the wall.
Okay, so does that mean 2AC order or block order?
Block order.
Got it.
I feel like you floated block order, and I also floated.
I just created a bunch of space and moved back to where the 1R was, so you could do either one, it's fine with me.
Well, I floated and.
Okay, you got it in 1 in R order, 1 in R order is fine?
Yeah.
All right.
Anyone not ready?
Trump can't circumvent. They didn't list any other way Trump can circumvent. They only said the emergency, but the absolute said because durable feel Trump has to faithfully comply with the DCs and FMS to Saudi Arabia. No film from Russia and China. First time they Saudi Arabia has to replace all, has to restrain all their troops and learn how to use the Russian and Chinese weapons because they're not interoperable with U.S. weapons. Second is cause they have to replace all of their weapons, which is too costly, and takes money that they don't have. Our allies will follow under pressure. Domestic pressure now will cause them to follow, and Trump only magnifies that pressure because they look back to the people. They don't want to look back. Maintenance is DC. That's good. You should read the line from good ending existing DCS means that companies can't work with Saudi Arabia and repair and teach Saudi troops how to work those weapons. Okay. The cage doesn't outweigh first is that call can't explain why Saudi bombs a potato chip factory there. Except what it doesn't explain this as there's Saudi was just that's what involvement in Yemen nor Saudi aggression. There's no reason as to why Saudi aggression now is oriented around settler colonialism and violence and oppression against natives. Second is the absol resolves the genocide, decreasing arms and cases stuff like that grounds Saudi aircraft in because they're heavily reliant on U.S. technical support and arms to make up 60% of their imports. Framework the role of the ballot to determine the desirability of the plan versus the alternative. That's key to fairness because we're able to weigh the app and have a clash over specific consequences of the plan. Without that, there's no deliberation over our impacts and how their critical studies apply to our impacts. The judge is an ethical policy. That means you evaluate policy proposals and implications of policy proposals. I'll do that state debate later. All their offense on firming relies on subjectivity, but debate doesn't equate to argument. Dramatically shift subject information. There are multiple all causes interpersonal relationships, policy clubs, Socratic seminars, organizations, youth groups, community centers, other extracurricular activities, etc. All contribute to subject information more than debate because they all form who we were as people before and during and after debate. Plan focus is good. It focuses on allows us to focus on the methods to resolving breaches of violence. They can still get laid out based on the discourse of the album. We don't exclude their theory, so there's no sequencing coming here, right? We're just saying that you should develop the absent impact and our methodology. I guess the critiques topic education comes first. The topic changes every year means we only learn about arms settler colonialism. No, never go away. It's on every single topic. No, understanding about policy proposals on each and every single topic is better is necessary to challenging the state. They link back to their user farming. They explain how they've stated that we don't actually. That's obviously how utilitarian frameworks. We don't link back because we don't have time to use those the people dying in Yemen against the critique noise flows at it cites multiple instances about such as the Red Power movement, which allow for recognition of natives and the Indian which creates sovereignty for natives. All those proposals proves that politics is able to solve their reckoning. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't disprove that politics isn't able to reduce or resolve violence. Just because it changes its form doesn't necessarily mean that the lives of natives are better than they were 100 or even 200 years ago. The link debate, there's a link debate where we're going to say action because we condemn the state for for its involvement in Yemen and for its involvement in Yemen that shifts us away, creates a mindset shift away from the state should have some sovereignty over arms sales and the feeling makes no sense. Obviously, it's not real, but we shouldn't be able to imagine and discuss a world in which the absent implement. There's no way, it's not a subject of secret. It's tough to discuss a relevant issue. The gender colonialism makes no sense. We don't have to spell violence and arms sales and condemn the state and genocide, no root cause. They over simple things like capitalism, military, sexism, racism, and etc. create the same forms of violence. The permeate. Okay, the single form of violence, they don't account for those things. They have permanent there isn't any instance we consent to anytime that they say for doing what they're obviously no attempt to create this. They look at we endorsement state doesn't mean demands don't mean endorsement. That's the show evidence the co-option and like it makes no sense. Co-option doesn't make no sense because we can't understand there's no way we can create something. There's an
Okay, we have
608.
608, yeah. Starting now. The order is going to be case K. And then K in the order of the block.
Hello.
Case and case.
Yes.
Block order.
Oh, sorry. I was like, yeah. Okay.
And then you can give that back to me, and then I'll give it to you for the other stuff.
Okay, cool. All right. Is everybody ready? Cool. We'll concede the durable fiat self-circumvention will cross the to the framework flow later, Russia or China feels and Saudi doesn't have to be a global military power to conduct action. We don't have to win the Russia or China weapons are incompatible or compatible with the same quality as US weapons, just that they have those weapons that they can be used to kill people. They don't need to completely retrain the entire military and every single system to use Chinese or Russian weapons in Yemen or Europe feels because of the financial incentives to continue selling arms to Saudi Arabia. Always any internal pressure and disrespect for Trump means that they're especially not likely to follow on his image has been damaged too much for one plan to resolve all of the bad relations with European leaders. Their cavalry court says that unilateral action is insufficient. Negotiation need to occur prior to the plan for them to access any solvency. They said the internal pressures also our Germany example proves that internal pressures don't overcome financial incentives and any solvency deficit. We win lowers the threshold for voting for the K because A proves A, they use images of violence to justify the violence, and B, they don't actually solve, which means the alternative is the only viable method in this debate. On the K. Settler colonialism is a structure of the computer science that they continually perfect the state of the human through the intersection of indigeneity and blackness. Though the K turns in ways that the after one really important reason they don't have an understanding or explanation as to how the violence of the 1AC happens. We asked them to know whether there was no work on this in the 1AR. Winning the root cause means you should have A, very high bar for any solvency B class because they just paper over the root cause of violence and score, and B, a very low threshold for all solvency because the alternative point, completely conceded refusal, is the only way that you can combat any structure of settler colonialism. And from what their kind of interpretation is defend the epistemological assumption of the 1AC, they should be held accountable for the minutes of the 1AC serving out of reps is not real world. You've seen the news. We know it's not true. The 1AR was terminal defense. Our interpretation is better for fairness and education. They only extended, they went for topic education is the only impact that you can have in this way. That means that we're gonna turn their education because they want to separate out of the reps. It's better for them. Yeah. A, the plan is informed by the advantages mean that if we win your assumptions are flawed, or two that are bad, then so too is your plain text. Means the links are tangentially related to the plain text. Also, we win the root cause of it, which means that we don't even need to win the link debate to win that the affirmative has zero risk of solvency. And this also really turns their education claims because they have the evident prep to make the 1AC as least effective as possible, and B, will turn their education is premised on the basis of unanalyzed persistent method, which is uniquely bad because it leads to unchecked actions that only risk propagating even more violence through severing reps. In Trent's case proves their interpretation creates bad debates, and even worse debaters like Karl Rove's. Sure, other places can inform subjectivity, but that's no response to the fact that debate doesn't necessarily impact your subjectivity. Karl Rove should have to debates with cards that encourage the competitive nature of debate literally encourages people to lie and for unchecked research methods. It's bad for debate. See, their interpretation is skewed around to the affirmative since it allows teams to win just by having racial justification. This turns portable skill to education and procedural fairness because it trains debaters to separate out of racial justification, meaning that any spill of claim is predicated off of unchecked reps. It means that any education of the affirmative garners of praise is predicated off of racist representation, quantify their circumvention claim. This turns all of their education because it means that the app gets a fee up to the actual implementation of lash out that happens because of the claim that their education is predicated off of unrealistic policy. Even if you get the topic education first, they just want to fiat out of topic education, means that they don't actually get any of the education they claim for. The rule of the ballot is the faciality of colonialism. Yeah, sure, the ballot determines who is really the only team that told you how to do the preferred specificity, but they had literally no defense here, which means if we win this argument by negative on presumption because we've won a question of starting points as the House settlers operates in the root cause rate. It's not infinitely regressive. They misunderstand the thesis of the metaphysical question reason claiming proximate causes first or other explanations. Fees too bad from the debate because A, we don't confront our biases and don't engage with the structural nuances of the world, and B, this turns their standards are claiming because it proves that any spill-up claims that they want to have aren't actually real world, but they're just dog whistles for respectability politics, which irreparably taints the method of the affirmative interpretation. Means you should be highly skeptical of the reasoning, but we'll explain the balance of the 1AC better than they do after the British started colonizing most of the Middle East post-dissolution of the Ottoman Empire after World War II. They imposed boundaries that split up the Middle East. They didn't use existing lines and thusly divided huge ethnic groups like the Kurds and the Saudi Arabian people. British colonial rule is what split up those people, which caused things like ethnic wars and genocide because certain nations and people were left without states. Saudi Arabians believe that Yemen was part of their territory, which literally proves why Saudi Arabia is interfering in Yemen, which explains why the violence of the Afghans happened in the first place. Saudi Arabia's position of the arbiter of power initially was predicated off of their being the pet of the British Empire. The US did the same thing with them after Britain pulled that. So it also explains why we use things like genteel colonialism with the good and 18 evidence is really clear in this. Don't let them paint the affirmative as an anti-state or liberal policy when their good and 18 evidence literally is predicated off of the US using things like arms sales as the next chess piece to continue US political interventions in those areas and arbitrary of things like Yemen. Goodman literally goes far enough to say that the affirmative is not just for stopping Yemeni conflict. Don't let them see this. It's for other US incentives within the region to assert dominance internationally through practices. It continues the US's process of world ordering. the only answer that they have to this is like, we want to stop violence against Yemeni people. The good 18 evidence proves that this is not true. Don't let them paint the opposite good thing. If we want the best explanation for violence of the 1AC, you should prefer our method because we are the only team that is actually understand why their violence even happens in the first place. When we win root cause, we win the debate, even if they win. Any risk of their impacts is the reason the K-trans database, there's zero chance to solve the genocide. There's at least a chance that the alternative solves, and they consider the noise count leads to things like simulation politics, and Save Oaks Flood Off is inevitably Save Oaks Flood Off is inevitably like pushed back and like 2 other subcouncils of subcouncils. No DAPO was rolled back because people like Trump in a justice-controlled house. There's no way that like this will actually solve on the perm. Due with extent fluidity, their use of King's scholarship to win the debate on the perm and fluidity, decide performance movements that engage the state results in co-option. Don't grant them a permanent question when we're winning ontology claims to the really extended perm. The first with no explanation, they functionally instate the alternative, which means that you can grant a full solvency refusal is a good practice for several resisting settler colonial epistemology. Fiat is illusory, which means that the alternative is an injunction to the app settler epistemology proofs. Refusal of the app is a refusal to let the recoding of these countries justify the action of the app. The alternative is secretly the degenerate process of the 1AC on noise cat. If we want a root cause claim, it doesn't matter.
226.
Starting.
I'll have a drink.
Case K. If anybody's not ready.
So just like, okay.
Vote affirmative to endorse a pragmatic negative state action that to allow the U.S. to stop its active genocide in Yemen. The alternative justifies massive amount of unending violence inflicted upon victims of the war. 233 Yemenis will die in 2019 unless the U.S. blocks arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The plan by shifting of arms sales leads to the jump sales of peace negotiation, forcing the coalition to change the strategy to seize its combat U.S. is like Europe models U.S. And they would do whatever the U.S. does because of the internal pressure that also works onto the K. They made this K terms and out with the app, but that doesn't matter because they haven't explicitly explained how the link, all coming out of the 2 and or why the app method is a bad idea. But I'll do that more on the line by line and on to the framework debate. Framework, the role of the ballot is to determine the desirability of the plan versus the all. That's key to fairness because the enter prevents us from weighting the app impact and sovereignty against the all. That shuts down clash over specific consequences of the plan, which decks discussion over how the critical studies apply to the war in Yemen and Saudi Arabia. That turns the critical education and subjectivity offense because we don't learn how to use what we know to solve violence. And the 2 and all consider that they link back to the framework offense. The net has claims that the oath outweighs the magnitude in the 2 and C wall, and claiming that focusing on the most amount of life is bad. This means that they don't solve any of the framework offense, but we solve ours. Don't let them sever out of their reps. There was no and they make this argument about how the root cause that they explain that it's not infinitely regressive, but there wasn't a solid explanation of how said call leads to, I guess, bombing of churches and and killings of civilians in Yemen. There wasn't a sufficient explanation coming out of the 2 and all. They just said they went on framework, but on root cause, but there's no root cause. We should focus on specific instances in which violence occurs. Their attempts to oversimplifies the way the world actually works, which prevents an effective solution from being created. We can solve for instances of said call, but not the whole thing. And the 2 and all stated that corporate interest or capitalism prevents the reduction of arms from occurring, proves that other forms of violence also contributes to the violence in Yemen, and Saudi aggression means there's no single root cause. Root cause. And I guess I'll do the perm debate.
Link.
Huh?
Link.
Oh, link debate. They have 2 links coming out in that, and it doesn't make sense because first there's no fiat link. Fiat isn't real, but the discussion we have over own self policies all key to any education. We get in this debate, and there's no gender colonialism link. We don't fetishize any violence. We're saying that the state should stop arms cells, stop arms. Is an attempt to make Saudi Arabia less aggressive. That's Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is trying to say that we're not attempting to be imperialistic. We condemn the state for imperialism. That's Kreger. We reduce the instances of imperialism in the Middle East because the fact that the US is over there in the first place is the reason why it's creating the violence in the first place on the perm. Extend perm to both. First, there's a couple of reasons why you should be voting on the perm today. First, the plan doesn't prevent the all from occurring, and both can occur at the same time. Make them prove why eliminating own self to Saudi Arabia to stop the genocide in Yemen is mutually exclusive with the all. 2, we want terminal defense on the links and link term. If you buy any of those arguments, that means you're voting on the perm. And 3, the perm utilizes the state to get rid of imperialistic acts of increasing cellular logic. Again, extend noise scat. It proves.